I found the relay station the way. I found everything in the Kethra Flats. By accident, by thirst, by the particular desperation of a man who had stopped caring whether he found anything at all. The station had been dark for 3 seasons at least. The outer door was unsealed, the solar array stripped to bare poles, the dust inside thick enough that my boot prints were the first marks in it since whoever left last. I went in because the wind outside was picking up grit that would flay exposed skin in an hour, and because I had learned, after 7 years on the flats, that shelter was shelter and you did not walk past it out of pride. I was checking the back storage for anything the strippers had missed when I heard it. Not a voice, not a cry, a sound like air moving through a very small space, a breath, thin and careful, the sound a thing makes when it is trying not to be found. The thermal crate was shoved behind a collapsed shelving rack. It was the kind rated for medical cargo or live specimens, double-walled, with an independent heat cell. Someone had sealed it from the outside, which told me either it had been a mistake or it had been done in a hurry by someone who ran out of time to correct it. I cracked the seal. She was curled inside like something that had learned to be very small. Pale, the pale of her skin, which was not white, but a kind of ash blue that shifted to gray and shadow. She had markings along her jaw and collarbones, iridescent, like oil on water. Her eyes opened when the light hit her, amber all the way through, no white, and she looked at me with the particular stillness of a creature that had already decided it could not outrun whatever came next. I looked at the heat cell readout on the crate's interior panel. For hours, I looked at the station's operations board, which was still running on residual battery. There was a render crew beacon on it, logged in from the Outer Margin Authority relay 2 days ago. Standard salvage notice, station decommissioned, licensed crew inbound, estimated arrival. I did the calculation, 6 hours from the station, give or take. Everything in the building was recoverable property under the OMA's Colonial Salvage Charter. That was the law on the flats. Had been for 30 years. I did the math. For hours of heat, 6 hours of walking to the Tessavar settlement at the flats' eastern edge. I did it again in case I had made an error. I had not. She watched me do it. I did not have a plan. I had a pack, a half-liter of water, a dust cloth large enough to wrap a small body in, and boots that had another week in them if I didn't push. I picked her up. She was lighter than the pack. She made no sound at all except that same careful breath against my collar. We went out into the flats. The first hour she slept, or something close to it, a shallow, drifting state that I took for shock and did not try to interrupt. I kept her inside the dust cloth and walked into the wind, because the wind was coming from the east, and east was where we needed to go. The salt crust held underfoot for the most part. Where it didn't, I tested each step before committing. In the second hour, she woke properly. She looked at the sky, the Kethra sun, which is smaller than it should be, and throws a hard copper light that makes everything look like it is already on fire, and she said something I did not understand. Fua, I don't speak it. I never learned. I know, I said, which was not a response to anything she had said, but was the only thing I had. She did not speak again for a long time. In the third hour, her legs were working, and she walked beside me, small feet in the salt, the dust cloth knotted around her shoulders like a cloak. She was watching the ground with an attention I recognized, the way you watch a surface when you're trying to understand its rules. I showed her where the crust was sound. She learned in 4 steps. After that, she stayed on the firm line without being told. Her markings moved when the light hit them at an angle. Not much, just enough that I noticed. The heat cell was in my pack. I checked it against the sun's position. We had burned an hour of margin. 3 hours of heat for hours of walking. Not a disaster. Not comfortable. In the 4th hour, she held my hand. I don't know when it happened exactly. I became aware of it the way you become aware of weather, gradually, and then all at once. Her hand was smaller than my fist, and the grip was not tight, just present, the way a child holds on when they have decided the thing they're holding is not going anywhere. I had not been anyone's anything for a long time. The wind came up hard in the 5th hour, and I wrapped the dust cloth around us both, and we moved through it with our heads down. The salt went horizontal. I could not see the eastern ridgeline, which meant I was navigating by the wind's angle and the feel of the ground under my boots, and 7 years of having no other choice. She did not complain. She leaned into the wind like she was used to worse. Maybe she was. In the sixth hour, the ridgeline came back into view, and I could see the Tessavar settlement's relay tower, its light blinking in the copper haze. My boots were through. My right heel had been bleeding for the last 2 hours through a split I had not noticed starting. The dust cloth was stiff with salt. The heat cell had 40 minutes left. We were 20 minutes out. I had not let myself do that calculation until I was certain enough of both numbers that the answer would hold. The render crew came up behind us in the last quarter mile. A salvage crawler, big, six-wheeled, the OMA's yellow stripe on the door. It pulled alongside and the crew boss leaned out. He was not an unkind-looking man. He was a man doing a job, and the job had a charter, and the charter was clear. "You came out of the Heron relay station," he said. It was not a question. "I did." He looked at the child. She looked back at him with her amber eyes and her iridescent markings and her dust cloth cloak, and he looked away first. "Anything you took out of that station is recoverable property under." "She was in a thermal crate," I said, "sealed from the outside. Heat cell at 4 hours when I opened it. We had been walking for 6. He looked at her again. "I'm not going to file a report," he said finally. "File whatever you want," I said. "I'll be at the Tessavar intake gate." He looked at me for a long moment. I was not a threatening sight. Split boot, salt-stiff coat, a pack with nothing in it worth confiscating, a man who looked like he had been eating badly for a month, which I had. He looked at the child again. He pulled the crawler back and let us walk. The Tessavar gate officer was a woman named Oral who had been processing intake for 12 years and whose face showed it. She looked at my transit papers, expired, technically, but not by enough to matter, and then at the child and then at me. "She's Vor," Oral said. "Yes. There's a Vor resettlement contact here. They've been trying to place children from a northern camp disbandment for 2 months." "I know," I said. I did not know, but did not surprise me. She took me through the gate into the medical receiving hall, and the intake medics took the child. Gently, efficiently, with the brisk competence of people who had done this before, and the child went with them without protest. At the door, she turned and looked at me. Not afraid, not accusing, just looking the way she had looked at the Kethera sky, trying to understand the rules of a new surface. I raised one hand. She turned and went through the door. Oral found me sitting on the bench outside intake an hour later. She had a cup of something hot, and she set it beside me without comment, which was either professional courtesy or the kind of pity that comes without condescension, and I had learned not to refuse either. "The resettlement contact is coming in from the Southern District," she said. "For community. She'll have a placement within a week." "Good," I said. "You need transit papers renewed. Medical clearance. The boot situation." "I know." She sat down at the other end of the bench. The copper light was going out of the sky. The Tessavar relay tower blinked steadily in the dusk. "Where were you going?" she asked. "Before the station." I thought about it. I had been going the same direction for 7 years. Forward. Across. Through. I had been going because stopping felt like a verdict I was not ready to accept. "Nowhere particularly," I said. She nodded like that was a complete answer, which maybe it was. I drank the hot thing. It was terrible. I finished it anyway. I did not know the child's name. She had not told me, and I did not speak for her, and there had been 6 hours of flats between the question and the answer. Maybe Oral's contact would know it. Maybe the child would tell them. What I knew was this: 4 hours of heat, 6 hours of walking, and a heat cell with 40 minutes to spare when we reached the gate. I had run the numbers wrong, it turned out. 40 minutes wrong in our favor. I thought about that for a while. I thought about her hand in mine through the 5th-hour wind. I thought about the way she had learned the sound crust from the rotten in 4 steps. Small feet moving careful and precise, as though the flats were a problem she had already decided to solve. I had been walking a long time. For the first time in 7 years, I felt like I had walked somewhere.